Hi, David.
Hey, Diane.
How are you doing?
Good. I'm going to DC to visit my brother tomorrow.
Are you?
Yep.
Is he okay? Is it a fun visit? Nothing serious,
We'll
I
see.
hope?
No, nothing serious. Just
Okay.
say hi. I haven't seen him in a while. So, checking in with family. Yep.
You stay there, visit with him very long?
Just 4 days.
Oh, okay. That'll be a nice visit.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. Yeah, so I have to do the admitting people, I guess.
Yes. Well, unless you want, you could set me to be the host and I can do that, and then I will be
okay.
muting people. So for the first half of the meeting, I can do that, and then we'll switch it back to you, and
Okay.
then you can do that.
And let's see, where do I do that?
I think you might do it. You might do it on the 3 dots next to my name.
I just did it.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Very good. You're good at this.
Well, I've been playing around with it a while.
Good.
I hope we have a good
Turnout.
showing tonight. I think we might, because there's a lot of people really interested in the whole crime thing.
I think so. I think that's a big, a big item right now.
Yes.
Crime spree, 3 stolen cows.
You guys, can you hear me? This is
Yes,
Ginger.
Hi, Ginger. Yes, we can hear you.
I didn't know if I dropped in because I heard about inviting people. So you said I could just join. So I'm joining. I don't know if you can see me on video or not, but
not yet.
I don't know. Oh, is that because maybe I don't use this computer very often? Let me check.
You can.
It's fine.
There's a place that says start video.
On the bottom.
Be on the
often
bottom
on the bottom left.
Okay. I use stop, and I have. Okay, there's more. Stop incoming video. I don't know. Settings. I guess I use Teams. I don't know. Let's
all
see.
The way on the bottom left, there's a mute, and then there's something that looks like a camera.
Oh, you're right, and it says start video, and then I did. Huh? Oh, maybe I have a little.
Wait. You just gotta wait.
Okay. Let's see. Maybe. Huh. I think I have a little cover on my.
Oh yeah, you gotta pull your, make sure your camera can see you.
Yeah, okay, we'll figure it out. I just haven't done this format. Okay, I'll figure it out. Oh, there.
Hey, there you are. Oh, there she is.
Okay,
great. Thanks for graciously inviting people. I'm, it's nice.
Well, glad you're here. That's wonderful. It's always wonderful to see new folks joining our meetings, and we've had meetings of, how was our biggest one, David? 160 people or something?
It was,
time?
I missed that. Really big. This is my first. Yeah. All right. I suppose I can go back and look at the notes. What was that one covering? Not crime, but.
No, it wasn't covering crime, but there was a huge turnout.
I forget what it was for. Yeah.
Was it for the field? Like the schools wanted to close down the fields for community, or
not at all? It was all about climate actions for.
That's right.
Endorsing King County's new laws for new buildings.
That was it. The building code. Yeah.
The building code.
Oh, okay. Kind of the offset rule, or?
No, it was more turning things to electric as opposed to gas.
That's right. Yes.
That's right. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Big happenings.
Yeah.
I'm on the north end, and I just read about the crime, and I kind of heard little bits about I haven't been asked, but I'll ask around about like community zones they were talking about doing. Maybe they're doing that island wide. I don't know. I
don't think anybody's doing anything island wide.
Okay.
on
So
that,
maybe it's
but
just a North End thing. Yeah.
I think
We'll
it's a
see.
North End thing because that's where there's been problems. It appears
Yeah.
that, I don't know, people are getting off the ferry, coming and doing stuff and getting back on the ferry. It seems like to me, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm on the North End, but I'm not part of that group. So
No, I'm not either. And I haven't ever had any issues. So knock on wood, but I don't want anyone to have issues. So
no,
happy to
that's right.
be
No,
part of the solution, right? Because
yeah.
it could be any of us. But anyway, all right. Well, I'll mute myself so you guys can, keep doing your agenda and everything. But nice, thank you, and I'll see you around. I'll be here, but I'll
You'll be
mute
here.
myself. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Doesn't look like I even have to. Oh, you're admitting people. That's
Yes,
why.
I'm admitting people as they pop up
It's
and
like,
say,
wow, they're
"Who's
just
in the
coming
waiting
in
room?"
here. Right?
Who's letting them in?
Hmm.
Hey, Hunter. Thanks for joining us. Glad to see you here, Rob.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
And who's phoning in with their iPhone tonight?
That is Mika.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Thanks. I'm glad you're with us, Mika. Hey, Susan, thanks for joining us. I haven't seen you on our meetings. I haven't noticed if you've been attending or not, but it's wonderful to have you. Glad to see you here, Heather. It's wonderful to have you tonight. A lot of people are looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Hello.
Oh, good morning, good afternoon, evening. Yeah, good evening, people. Hi, Melvin.
Hello.
Hey, Melvin, how's it going?
Okay. And Diane, would you be able to give the brief technical overview for Zoom?
I will, as soon as, there's still a lot of people I'm admitting to the
Oh,
meeting
okay.
here.
Sure, go right ahead.
And we don't have a quorum yet anyway, so I'm just gonna let people come in. They're coming in fast and furious here at the moment.
Well, good.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's hope they're not furious for too long.
So I was wondering, call-in user number 1, could we find out who that is, please? Okay, well, we definitely have a quorum, so I think I will go ahead and let people in as I can while I'm giving guidance here for our brief technical overview for Zoom.
Okay.
So everyone, if you could remember to keep yourself muted unless speaking, and you can mute yourself with the mute button on the far left bottom of your screen, of your Zoom screen. And it's best if you would just sign on with your phone or with your computer, but not both, because it can cause problems with the system and can create feedback, a lot of feedback that can happen. And so the Democratic Rules of Order link will be posted, which is how we manage these meetings. And you can, if you wish to speak in the meeting, you need to raise your hand, ideally with the bottom where it talks about the reactions. You can have, on the reactions, you could put a thumbs up or a heart, or etc., but you can also raise your hand. So it would be really good if you would take a look at reactions on the bottom of the Zoom screen and find where it says to raise your hand. And then you can be called on. And it keeps track of who raised their hand first, so which is really handy, so we know who to call on first. And then after you've talked, you can remember to lower your hand as well, to speak to a motion or participate in open discussion. So for people who are calling in on phones, you'll need to unmute yourselves by hitting *6, and then let us know that you wish to speak. Otherwise, because we have no way to see you raising your hand. Okay, so there we go for the quick technical overview. And I will put the link to the Democratic Rules of Order in the chat for people.
Great. Thank you, Diane. And thank you all for coming. We do have a quorum now, and I'd like to start this month's March 21st meeting of the Vashon-Maury Island Community Council. It's a forum that's basically runs on citizen participation. The more participation, the better. So we're looking forward to a good meeting tonight. And thank you for posting the Democratic Rules of Order. People who are unfamiliar with the rules, it's a change from what used to be the Roberts Rules of Order that we used for these meetings. But we found that people were using the Roberts Rules as a weapon to silence people, or, that it made too much importance as to whether or not you understood these technical rules. And the Democratic Rules of Order seem to be more user-friendly, and so that's what we've changed to. And so far, it's worked pretty well. Okay, at this point, I'd like to know if there are any people who, having had the opportunity to review the minutes from last month's meeting, which have been sent out, if there are any changes or corrections.
Point of order, David.
Go ahead.
First, we need to
Oh,
review and approve the
Approve the
agenda.
agenda. Yes, thank you. And has everyone had an opportunity to review the agenda? And are there any people who would like to make changes to the agenda for this month's meeting? And let's see, I don't see any hands raised. So I would say that seeing no objections to the minutes or the agenda as stated, I will adopt the agenda for this month's meeting, which then leads me to look at the minutes from last month's meeting. And having had the opportunity to review those minutes, is there anyone here who has any corrections, changes that you'd like to make to the minutes for last month's meeting? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So I will view that as a negative. And so seeing no objection to last month's minutes, I will adopt the minutes for last month's meeting. Next item would be for me to welcome our guests from off island. And we have a few, notably Captain Heather Volpe from the Sheriff's Office, who will be speaking to us. And this is our first opportunity to meet with Heather. So welcome to the Community Council.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great. And Mike Spranger. Okay, who else do we have from King County with us today? King County, let's see.
So David, I'm here from the prosecutor's office. Presentation on hate crimes along with Chris Wong, who'll be joining shortly.
Oh, great. Great. Thanks very much, Eric. And let's see. Yep. So those are our guests from King County for this evening, and welcome and thanks for taking the long ride over to Vashon. You know, it's kind of funny. We used to make sure to get the King County guests on early so they could catch the ferry going off, but that's not as big a problem on Zoom. Okay, at this point, I'd like to ask Captain Heather Volpe to give us an update from the King County Sheriff's Office. She'll be assuming the Precinct 4 Operations Captain position and will be our contact for the Vashon-Maury Island Community Council going forward. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm very much looking forward. I've just been transferred to our Southwest Precinct about 3 weeks ago. So I am working my best to get to know the communities that I'm working with. Vashon-Maury Island, I've got White Center and also West Hill Skyway. So I'm learning a lot. It's the one precinct I haven't worked out of. For Vashon specifically, I was out at the island last week. I'm trying to make it a point that I'm out probably every 3 to 4 weeks, hanging out, getting some coffee, meeting people in the community. I'm talking with my deputies and looking a little bit more in the community, what the community strives to have improve and what we need to do to help support you guys. The one thing that I did notice is the increase of car prowls and the theft on the island. I learned this basically from talking with the deputies that are working on the island and also through some of the community contacts I've had. And one thing I would love to encourage through this avenue is to report these incidents. There's a lot of conversations amongst the individuals on the island. And when I go in to look through my data to justify or ask for more resources, if I don't have that report or an online report or even calling to our deputies, it helps me a lot to help you to get those resources out. Also, those deputies that come onto the island, they review this information so they know maybe where to focus or where they need to reach out. We have 2 deputies assigned on day shift and 2 deputies on our graveyard that work pretty consistently on the island. Our swing shift can be a little inconsistent, so having that information is really helpful for our deputies. Like I said, I know there's a lot of conversations on the island and I would love to support you guys more, but I need a little help with getting that information. With the car prowls, some advice I would give is, unfortunately, we're to a point where we need to start locking our cars, making sure we don't have those valuables in our cars, and helping out in that way, which is a little different. The island is a very safe, secure area, and this is a new thing that's coming up. I can say In the last few weeks, we did arrest one individual who had stolen 2 cars, and I believe did one of the burglaries on the island. So we do have them in custody, and that investigation was closed out. I'm looking forward to my time here. Currently, I think, did Major Hodgson come attendees in the past? Is that who was attending this? I'll have another major one day. Major Hodgson got reassigned to another unit as well. So as much as I'm learning my new communities, I'm also learning a lot of other parts of the Southwest Precinct. So I'm excited to be here. Like I am, I'm learning a lot about the community. So hopefully my next presentation will be a little more complete and thorough, but I hope you guys can appreciate a little bit of my learning curve that I'm going under. Anyone have any questions or concerns they want to talk to me about?
Hey, do we have questions for Captain Volpe? People, let's see. Wow. You know, you're getting off pretty easy this meeting.
They're being nice to me. So they've got 3 weeks in. They're like, okay, next time I'm getting her next time.
That must be it. Okay, because I know that there. Oh, go ahead, Diane.
Oh, sorry. Yes, your Captain Volpe, your language is coming across a bit garbled, and maybe people are having a hard time hearing you. Do you think there's anything you can do on your end to be more clear in the communication? No.
I don't think so.
Okay, all right. So maybe just to speak more slowly then for people if you're answering questions and things then.
I am a fast talker. That is a challenge I've had my entire career. I talk way too fast.
And I'll look for questions in the chat, see, and if there's any. But it'd be better if you'd raise your hand. It's a lot. Oh, Rob Harmon and Steve Bergman, David, have their hands raised. And David, you're muted.
Waiting room.
Oh, yes. Rob, you had a question?
Yeah, well, Captain, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I'm wondering what the status is these days with officers and writing speeding tickets. I know that we seem to have gone through a lull on Vashon where there's not a lot of speeding enforcement. And I also know there's been a lot of concern about legislation that passed in Olympia, and I know there's been some efforts to try to address some of that. But I've noticed a very distinct drop-off in officers present to control speeds on the island. I'm wondering what you could say about that. Thank you.
Yeah, that was brought up last week. There was a town hall meeting with the King County government, and that was brought up when the undersheriff. And so we looked over our review of our statistics for 2021, and being a former traffic sergeant, yeah, I would agree. There is a low number of traffic enforcement. Talking to some of the deputies and the sergeants, there has been an impression that traffic enforcement was not one of the top priorities of the island. There were some other areas, but I'm understanding that priority might be a change. And if there's some specific areas, I was going to do some research on the collision history, but also there was a concern. I can't remember the exact location, but it was regarding near a bus stop actually, and with the people driving quickly to get to the ferries in the morning.
I know that there have been a lot of, I live in the Gorsuch area, and there's a lot of concern here, both about speeding on Gorsuch, but perhaps more importantly for the rest of the community. What I'm noticing is that there's a lot of speeding going north out of town. So people get past the library and they're immediately going to 40 or 50, which means they're going past the park and ride lot at Ober, and they're going at 40, 50 miles an hour. They're going past the library too fast. And there's also a crosswalk that people use a lot at Cove. And by the time they get there, they're easily doing 50. So it's really an issue there. And there's a real nice spot over by where the veterinarian clinic is there that the officers could park and grab people coming north out of town. So we've got a good spot there to get people slowing down. So
I'm getting these notes. It's nice to even have a spot that you can suggest.
Very good. I've seen officers park there, and I often will stop and talk to them. So anyway, I appreciate your time.
No, thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, Steve.
So welcome and congratulations on your new assignment.
Thank you.
Your new position and opportunities, and we look forward to meeting you on face-to-face. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of one of the new neighborhood watch organizations that formed in the north end of the island. And there may be others in other neighborhoods on Vashon that might be worth working with closely. So just wanted to make sure that you were in the loop on that.
I was aware that there were some neighborhood watches starting. I'm not familiar with who's running those. I would love to get connected with those individuals and maybe through the deputies as well to make sure we have that connection, because I think that's the winning circuit. So my email is just heather.volpe@kingcounty.gov. So if you want to shoot me an email, I'd love to interact with people, especially for those neighborhood watches.
Great, thanks.
Mhm.
Good luck.
Okay, Art Chippendale.
Yes, hi. And welcome to the island.
Art, I think you lack the bandwidth.
So
Art, could you turn off your video?
concern is that it keeps coming up.
There you go.
Oh, oops.
That should work.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
No one needs to see me anyway. Does that help?
It helps with your audio.
Okay. So, question or my issue really is the amount of can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Anybody?
Yeah,
Yeah.
can hear you.
Good. So, yeah, my concern is that we have a lot of motorcycles and trucks and loud, high speed, up and down all hours, but it's particularly apparent at night. And I wonder if there's anything that can be done about that. Maybe some kind of noise monitoring or something, and talking to these people, and then maybe giving infractions.
You came up a little garbled for me, but what I heard you say is that there's some loud motorcycles and other vehicles. Is that?
Hello.
Art, we can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's challenging with I'm forgetting the exact legal term, but for a loud muffler, for loud vehicles, motorcycles who have alterations beyond the original manufacturing of their exhaust system.
Okay, yeah, that's the issue. Mostly
yeah.
late at night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will take notes about that as well. What area are we talking? You got garbled a little bit for me, but what area were you discussing?
So is there something that can be done?
There can be something done. Where exactly is it?
I'm just about a third of a mile. Well, I am just about a third of a mile east of town. So okay. I hear it from trucks and motorcycles and, you know, anybody that's also those that are speeding, it's really loud.
One thing that people can also do
at night
is with the increase of concerns for traffic safety, which again, I was a traffic sergeant, so that's pretty my strong part of me, is report to sheriff.org. You can go online and you can report incidents, concerns for traffic complaints or suspicious things. And that gets fed right into our report writing system for all deputies to see, and including me, to ensure that we have people following up on these things. So I'm happy to take these notes. I'm going to take these notes. But as we move forward and you experience something or you see something, report to sheriff.org is a great option for you to report fast cars, concerns, safety, parks, vehicles, any of that thing would be helpful as well. But yeah, I got a third of a mile east of town, evening time, evening hours.
Yeah. Could you put that link in the chat?
Yes, I can do that. Let me do that. Let me back to my Zoom. Trying to take notes. I'm going from one screen to another.
Great. Okay. Reporttosheriff.org, is it?
Yes. This is also a link that you can report. Let's say someone entered your vehicle and maybe nothing was taken, or even if some items were taken, you can report it online. So if you have that unusual circumstance, suspicious circumstance is what we talk about, is something doesn't seem right, or there seems to be a group of people hanging out in an area, you can go online at any time on your phone, on your computer, and just report what you're seeing or what you're experiencing. It can also be, like I said, for mail theft. It can be for vehicles getting broken into. Some types of theft can also be included on this. It's a variety of things. And what happens is a sergeant gets that report, reviews it, and then enters into our massive report writing system that all deputies have access to. So this information then is included into the statistics for the island when we do our yearly statistics for the island, and also to review what kind of resources we should be utilizing or where we could go or what we need to do. This will add to that information, including with our 911 calls.
Oh, okay. And we just had a note here from Rob Harmon that the list of cities that we provide online reporting services does not apparently include Vashon yet.
It does, because Vashon is unincorporated coverage. And so those are the contract cities. The contract cities were asked whether they wanted to be on this online reporting system or not. It's always been available to everyone. It has just changed to certain contract cities and unincorporated King County that it becomes, when someone calls 911 and they meet the requirements to do online reporting, a lot of people are routed to that direction to help with our staffing challenges. It helps us to get that online, but then we can follow up with individuals one-on-one as well when they do that report. So
Great.
It's always going to be available to everybody.
Great. Thanks, Rob, for bringing that to our attention, and thank you for answering that question. Beverly Skeffington, you have a question.
Maybe you already answered this, and I'm really having a hard time understanding you. I'm sorry. But I'm wondering if the robberies that have been happening on the north end and the south end slowed down or stopped. Has there been some, because it's been an alarming rate of, I mean, I've lived here 40 years and I swear there's probably more robberies this year than in the whole 40 years I've lived here.
Oh, if I could just point out, the term is burglaries as opposed to robberies. Robberies are in-person crimes where someone is stealing from someone else. Okay. With that.
That's what I was talking about though.
Sure, sure.
And
Okay.
I'll remember to talk slower. That is my weakness, is I'm a fast talker. When I've looked through the last 2.5 months, I was going through since January 1 of Vashon, all 911 calls, and every single report that was written in Vashon for the last 2.5 months. I didn't see it consistent with the conversations that's being had on the island. But we did have someone in custody for some burglaries and some car thefts, and that was a recent arrest. And we're continuing with the other investigations. And we had a couple reports where there are individuals that nothing was taken within their home, but the deputy wrote the report anyways, just because of the increased conversations about the thefts that are happening both in town and in homes around the island. So we do have one person in custody for that, and talking to the deputies, that arresting to help substantially on some of the incidents that were happening. Not eliminated it, but it did help reduce it, yes.
You're muted, Beverly.
Okay. I would also
Okay.
like to say I just don't see police cars around the island like I used to. I don't know if they're just kind of hanging out at the cop shop there or what, but we just don't see them. I don't see them driving around, hanging out at Stockton Park. Yeah, I just don't see them.
That's good to know. Those are things that I like to know so I can address that. So thank you for letting me know that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Do we have other questions out here? Well, I don't see any questions at the moment. So thank you again very much for coming, and we look forward to getting to know you better.
Thank you.
And, you know, you can go home now. Or if you want to stay and listen to more, we're going to have Bailey DeYoung is going to talk about an update on the Police Accountability Committee. So
I was actually going to stay for that and the prosecutor. So yeah, I'll be hanging
great.
out for a little bit longer.
Okay, excellent.
Thank
Thank you. Okay. And with that, I would like to introduce our own Beverly DeYoung, who has had many years as a public defender and has put in a lot of time in order to, you know, increase accountability on the part of law enforcement, and also just issues of justice in general. So Bailey, thank you for coming.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. And yeah, thank you to Ms. Volpe. So I'm going to talk about police accountability as it's reflected in the work of the Public Safety Advisory Committee towards the implementation of the county charter amendments that were passed in 2020. And I'm going to put a link in the chat for about the committee, and also it's got a link to their report. So in 2020, I was here and talked with the sheriff and you all about the proposed changes to the county charter that would make the sheriff an appointed position in order for it to be more accountable, and also to give the council the power to determine the duties of the sheriff's office. And those charter amendments passed handily. And as a result, the Public Safety Advisory Committee was formed to help the council have a public voice in implementing those charter amendments. And I serve on that committee as a representative for unincorporated rural King County. And our task was to come up with guidance to the council on the appointment of the new sheriff and to recommend ways to improve law enforcement services. The PSAC includes community members like activists and such, but other community members that are represented are police guild officials, 2 of them, 2 city managers from the cities who contract with the sheriff's office to provide police services, and then also a representative from the Office of Law Enforcement Oversight's Community Advisory Committee. So it's a broad ranging committee. There's 2 representatives from each unincorporated type of area, rural, urban, and such. And the group met frequently and then issued its report in September with its recommendations, which we came to in consensus. And I want to emphasize that because the broad range of folks that served on this committee, you might not expect 2 police union officials to agree with community members, but we came to consensus on these issues. Excuse me. Racism was a major focus of the discussions, and it's a major focus of our report, and specifically how racism causes systemic failures in policy decisions, resource allocation, and the expectations that are placed on police today. Namely, that the expectation that police are the sole providers of public safety and that they're the answer to all society's ills. Our report emphasizes the need to see public safety broadly. Our society's been conditioned to see police as that answer, but public safety is really the result of many systems outside the police. Police simply can't handle everything. And for us to be safe, folks need jobs, housing, food, transportation, healthcare, and treatment options. And so the PSAC recommended that the sheriff work in consortium with all the other county departments. And having an elected sheriff was the exact opposite of what we need, because it became much more of a silo. Now, the appointed sheriff will be a member of the executive's cabinet and can work with much more directly than an elected official would. So I would suggest reading the report. The link, like I said, is in the chat. It's very short. I mean, well, it's 8 pages. It's not like 1 page, but it's relatively short for government reports. And it contains our ideas about what core values this broad-ranging group of folks wanted to see at the sheriff's office and in the sheriff. And we also listed the priority outcomes we want to see and the characteristics we want to see in the next sheriff, and how the public should be involved in the selection of that sheriff. So the process to select the new sheriff is happening right now. We have an interim sheriff, Patty Cole Tyndall, who sat in and participated in all of our meetings last year when she was under sheriff. Now she is the interim sheriff, and she is also a candidate, I should say, for the permanent sheriff. The executive will name the sheriff, but then the appointment has to be confirmed by the council. So the initial interviews of the applicants have happened already, and a member of our group sat in on those interviews and participated. And then right now they are selecting the finalists, as I understand it. And in April, we have a date to interview as the PSAC, as the Public Safety Advisory Committee, to interview the finalists. And then after that, the public will also have some opportunities to hear from the finalists. So that's where we are now in the selection of the sheriff. And the original timeframe I heard was a goal of having the permanent sheriff selected by middle of the year. So the report that we issued was used to craft the position announcement. And right now, the PSAC Public Safety Advisory Committee continues meeting with the sheriff on a monthly basis and other county folks. And so that work continues. Recently, I also wanted to add that recently the county asked the Community Council to weigh in on a proposed policy for the use of body-worn cameras and in-vehicle cameras. Last year, they did a pilot project. Vashon was one of the areas selected and used. We were asked to comment on that because it's going to be bargained with the Deputies Guild. And David, and I appreciate this, David, alerting me to the draft that came out because I hadn't been aware of it yet. The time frame was so short that we couldn't come before you all to tell you more about it. But the two of us, David and myself, met with the county folks to get an overview. And then separately, the Public Safety Advisory Committee was asked for feedback. So I ended up submitting some of my own thoughts after the meeting. And basically it had to do with how the body-worn camera videos are used and such. So we'll see what will happen because that has to be bargained.
Oh, on the agenda here.
So that's a brief summary of the Public Safety Advisory Committee's work for 5 minutes and or less, hopefully. But anyway, read the report. It was really a great group to work with, and those relationships that we established over time. 3 meetings in person, the rest on Zoom, and thank God those meetings were in Burien and not Timbuktu. And you know, they're valuable relationships, and so we're looking forward to working together. Thank you for inviting me tonight.
And thank you for your continuing work, Bailey, and for getting on top of that issue with the body cams right away too. It's great that you could give feedback on such short notice. So thank you.
I was lucky because some of the people I work with had commented last year on the early proposed policy. So I had some of their work to build on.
Yeah, but you know, the community owes a debt to you, Bailey, for keeping on top of this issue. It's great to have you working with us.
I'm happy to do it. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Bailey? Okay, I don't see any. So thank you very much. And the next item on the agenda is
No, I'm sorry, I have a question.
Oh, okay. And who's that? Oh, Robert
this is
Piston.
Rob Piston. Yeah, I'm sorry,
Okay.
my video is off, but I'm going to talk even though you can't see me. Can you hear me?
Oh,
okay?
right. I can see your hand. That's good. Okay.
So I guess my question is about the body cams and why this is a bargaining issue. It seems to me that if the community wants the law enforced in a certain way, that that's the way the law should be enforced. I mean, if we decided that the deputies ought to have radios, would that be something that the guild would bargain about also?
I don't know about radios, but I know that I'm not a labor lawyer, never was, but it's a condition of employment. It's something about how they do their job. So I believe it was bargained last year for the pilot program, and it was also bargained for the city of Seattle's police officers as well. So it's you might know from the press that there are a lot of things that are bargained in police contracts, and that's a whole area of concern about what should and shouldn't be bargained in a police contract.
All right, thank you very much.
That's a bit outside the scope tonight.
Okay, and thank you for the question. Yeah, thank you for the question, Robert. Do we have any other questions before we move on? Okay, I don't see any now. So at this time, I'd like to ask King County Deputy Prosecutors Stanley Lloyd and Christopher Wong to speak on the issue of hate crimes and community education outreach. Let's see, and where?
Hi, David.
Oh, okay, there you are.
And here's me, hello.
Okay, good to see you. Thank you for journeying out to our fair island.
It's very easy from the comfort of our own home.
Okay.
Well, thank you, folks. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us this evening. It's always great to not speaking to an empty room. So we appreciate your attention as we talk a little bit about hate crimes tonight. So Stanley and I are going to do a quick intro. We're going to spend a little bit less than half an hour, hopefully, just giving you an overview of what we'd like to talk about, and then leave some time for questions. I'll sort of lead with the conclusion, though, that our hope, folks, is that if you take anything away from this hearing, it's three things: that hate crimes are on the rise, that hate crimes are underreported, and that we at the King County Prosecutor's Office do take these seriously in terms of prosecuting them. And so really, this is just our chance to help educate really as many people as possible about what a hate crime is in the legal sense, and to help raise awareness so that they can be better reported and then followed through on. So with that said, just in a quick sentence or so, I'm Deputy Prosecutor Chris Wong. I've been with the office about 10 years. I currently work in the juvenile division. I'm the supervisor of the special assault, which is also known as the sex crimes unit. So that's who I am. And I'm going to tag Stanley in to do his intro, and he's going to get us started with some slides.
Thanks, Chris. And good evening, everybody. Thanks for having us again. I am Stanley Lloyd. I am actually a transplant to the Pacific Northwest, originally from Utah. I moved up here to take the job with the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I've been here for about 7 years and have worked in everything from DUIs to domestic violence, and now heading over to violent crime from juvenile, where I've been working with Chris for the last couple of years. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and share our presentation here, make sure that everybody can see it. All right, can everyone see? Excellent. I'm going to go ahead and start our presentation here. And to start us off, we're going to start first with the actual law itself. So in 2019, this specific RCW 9A36080, was changed to reflect the concept of hate crime as opposed to malicious harassment, which is how it was classified for a significant period of time. Hate crime was not only more accessible, but it was found to be more easily and readily understood. So the revised Code of Washington was updated to mirror that language. And particularly, the thing to focus on is obviously the components that are necessary to prove a hate crime. So the definition per this RCW is when a person maliciously and intentionally commits one of the following acts because of his or her perception of the victim's race, religion, sexual orientation, disability, etc. There's actually a whole itemized list in the RCW of various protected groups. And particularly, they have to cause a physical injury, they have to damage or destroy property, or threaten a group of people or members of a group. So one thing that I think is helpful to understand as to how this might work in the context of other crimes is that what the hate crime legislation and what this law does is it makes something that would potentially normally be just a misdemeanor, such as causing physical injury, which could be maybe an assault 4, damages to property, which might be a malicious mischief 3, or a threat to a person or a group of people, which might just be a misdemeanor harassment. This elevates it to a Class C felony if we can prove that element of being motivated by this person's perception of the person's race, religion, sexual orientation, etc. One thing I want to draw your attention to is the very unique way in which this particular crime differs from others that my office prosecutes. You might notice that here we actually have to prove motive. That's a pretty unique thing when it comes to criminal law. More often than not, motive is something that we can offer to a jury or to a court to explain why someone has taken a particular action. But here it's a requirement to prove the actual crime, as opposed to just something that can help advance the theory. So this is what makes hate crimes a challenge when it comes to filing them, when it comes to prosecuting them, that we have the unique and specific requirement with this type of law, with this type of crime, to actually prove that the reason they caused physical injury, the reason they damaged property, and the reason they threatened a person or group of people is because of their perception. That is really what makes this unique and distinct when it comes to the concept of prosecuting these cases, filing them and processing through the legal system. And I'm going to hand it off to Chris to kind of explain a few more wrinkles that actually come about when we deal with these particular types of cases, as my office has seen over the last couple of years.
Stanley, before you go on, could you explain the word maliciously? Because having been a prosecutor, it was my recollection that is about the highest and hardest state of mind to show.
In some respects, it can be, yes. Proving malice it gets to that concept of not just intentionally having committed the crime, but that you were motivated by that animus, that you had that specific desire to cause that. So when we look at it from a hate crimes perspective, you're right, David, like it rises to this new level of not only just proving intent to have assaulted, intent to have damaged, it's this idea that you have this specific feeling in your heart, is how the Latin kind of refers to it, to have caused that damage to that person specifically because you wanted to hurt them for your perception of their, protected class alliance or participation or existence in.
Okay, thank you.
Great question, David. Thanks. I'll kind of piggyback a little bit off a comment that Stanley just made about the motive. Again, I don't mean to make light of this, but as you can imagine, most people don't commit crimes while stating their intent. I am doing this to you because you are I think that we can all agree on that. So a lot of these kind of come down to fact-specific issues of, okay, what is the sort of social context and what can we as reasonable jurors infer in terms of what they meant? Because again, it's very, very rare that they're going to explicitly state that they are doing something because of this and not this. The other point I'll highlight is sort of on the other foot. It only has to do with the defendant or the suspect's perception that the victim is part of that particularized class. They don't actually have to be right, which again is one of the kind of interesting subtleties there. But to move to the slide that we're looking at here, these are just a couple of the real big highlights of things that my office has come across when actually trying to prosecute these crimes. Again, these are not necessarily good or bad, so much as just sort of observations that we've pulled from enough data from cases that we've actually seen in real life. The first point is that oftentimes with these types of crimes, as you can imagine, the victims are typically in extremely vulnerable positions. And that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but let's think of this sort of logically. a lot of these people may have issues in terms of speaking English and being able to accurately report to somebody accurately what has happened. Oftentimes there may be things like immigration in play, or distrust of law enforcement, or any person of official capacity that makes them reluctant to want to come forward with the information. Some of it has to do, again, with financial circumstances or other means. So this can create difficulties in terms of, first of all, locating the relevant victim, and then keeping them on board and keeping them invested in understanding what all this complicated legal stuff is. Because from their perspective, something terrible has happened. They told somebody, and then it kind of goes into this black hole where, you know, the lawyers are getting involved. So these are very common issues that come up and are things that we are looking to work on to try to, again, address these as best as possible. To the second point, mentally ill defendants. So again, this is somewhat of a, this is not true with all cases, but certainly we are seeing quite a few cases where the defendant or the suspect in question does have on some level a mental health issue. Now, that doesn't make it so they commit a hate crime, right? I mean, we're certainly not saying the inferences are that mentally ill people are more hateful than others. We're certainly not saying that. But again, there is this sort of added component when we consider issues in terms of things like proving the motive or proving intent or malice for somebody who may not necessarily have a particular legal capacity in terms of what they are or are not doing. So certainly that doesn't make it impossible to prosecute such a person. But again, it's just, I think, to raise awareness that that is a wrinkle that we often see when we're trying to figure out exactly how to handle some of these cases. And then mixed motive cases, this is something that maybe isn't intuitively obvious based upon the way that it's named. But sometimes one can commit a crime, which is both a hate crime in the sense that, again, they're maliciously and intentionally doing it because of the person's particularized class. But maybe that's not the only reason. And an example we often use is, say, you know, people get into like a fender bender or something like that. And then the defendant, the person who ended up becoming the defendant, gets out of the car and basically is wanting to start a fight because of the accident. But then there are elements in there that are thrown in as they're beating up the person that indicate that there is a level of hate crime based upon the things that they're saying as part of that. So the takeaway here is these are not mutually exclusive concepts. One can engage in a crime for more than one reason. And so again, it's just sort of a matter of us as the prosecutors, as we work through these cases, being able to kind of parse out, is it one, is it both, is it neither? So again, that's just something to kind of know that it doesn't absolve somebody of a crime just because they're doing it for perhaps more than one reason. I'm gonna also expand a little bit on something that we're going to see in a couple of slides, but I think it's really helpful to talk about here because I can appreciate, and I think we all can appreciate from a layperson perspective, when something terrible has happened, which appears to be a crime and potentially could be a hate crime, from their perspective, they just want to report what happened. They're not necessarily doing this legal analysis of what exactly is this and where is the line and so on and so forth. But I think something that we've run across that often creates some confusion for people that are not lawyers, and to be perfectly frank, for people that are lawyers, like me, who has reviewed this many, many times, is this kind of distinction from three kind of distinct topics. And again, you'll see these spelled out a little later. There's the actual hate crime, which is, again, refers back to the prior slide, that all of those elements can be proven and can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. But there are also two kind of other categories that often come up, which are cases that we often are unable to file as hate crimes, although they may seem that way on their face. So I think it's important to just kind of understand from educational purposes what those are. So there are non-criminal bias incidents. Again, if we kind of break that down, it's non-criminal, but it's got elements of bias in it. So I think oftentimes when one maybe says, hey, I think I might have been the victim of a hate crime, one might typically think of something like, somebody yells like a racial slur at them out the window, but there's no, and also, there's no violence, there's no destruction, there's no extra piece of it that actually creates the crime. So while there certainly is action by this person that is appearing to show bias because of this person's perception, there's not actually a crime attached to it. Certainly it doesn't make it any less hurtful to the person, but really that's, I think, an important distinction. And then the shoe being on the other foot, we have crimes with bias elements And again, that's kind of a little bit about what it sounds like if we break that apart. Here we have a crime has occurred, but can we link that to the bias that makes it jump over the hurdle to be a hate crime? So again, that would be a situation, for example, when kind of put the shoe on the other foot. One of these things that, as Stanley has put on the screen, has happened, but what is the part of it that makes it into a hate crime? Again, I'll draw you a very, I guess, basic example. Somebody beats up somebody that is a minority, and that's it. So the fact that the victim was a minority in and of itself doesn't make it a hate crime. Again, we have a crime that has occurred. There may be bias elements that we can maybe infer or not infer, but what is the actual extra piece of it that makes it into a hate crime? So again, sort of three little distinct concepts that from your lay purposes and from the victim's purposes may not make a lot of difference, but just to kind of give you some context, when we're screening these cases, these are kind of the analyses that we're doing. Has a crime occurred? And basically, is there a link that we can create that motive, that maliciousness and intentionality that makes it into a hate crime? So that's all I wanted to say about that. And I'll tag it off to Stanley.
Another question, if you would.
Yeah.
It talks about race, religion, sexual orientation. Those are all pretty standard. And then it talks of disability, etc. And do you have definitions for disabilities, or how are you doing that? For example, mental disabilities.
So the RCW has definitions attached to it, and there are interpretations that are there. To go through and analyze each one would take, I think, a lot longer than our presentation has.
Sure.
But I just directed to that RCW. This is something that you can just drop into Google, this 9A36080. You can click into that, and through Access Washington, you can be able to see that there. And then it'll direct you as well within that chapter to other definitions for 9A36.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So moving us forward, I want to kind of focus on who is being victimized, at least based upon the information that we have. I can tell you that right now, one of the biggest challenges that we have is the underreporting. Like Chris mentioned at the top of this presentation, underreporting is probably the thing that plagues us the most when it comes to analyzing this type of information. And being able to effectively, provide assistance and help folks that are in these circumstances. One of the few entities that is really aggressively kind of keeping track of this and has gone so far even to have a dedicated detective that just does these hate crimes cases is SPD. They keep an impeccable amount of data, or at least they are trying to keep as much data as they can on these particular incidences. And so this chart that I have here is taken directly from SPD's website. And through interacting with that detective, we've been able to get kind of an interpretation about what this information can give us. So who is being victimized? If you can kind of look here under the bias type, in other words, the motivated bias that is indicated in the police report, African-American men are accommodating that biggest chunk of the big blue bar. If everyone can see that, the race and ethnicity ancestry, so that how it's subdivided by those white lines, African-American men are that largest chunk there. And then if you go down, the next group is gay men under sexual orientation. They are the biggest section of the orange bar there. So as far as discreetly identifying the groups that are being most targeted by the reported hate crimes in Seattle, those are the entities that we're seeing the most victimization of: African Americans and gay men. But as you might guess from how we've been talking about this, we have reason to believe that this is deeply underreported. And underreporting gets told to us in a number of capacities. Either a report makes it unclear as to whether or not there is an incident that did involve a bias, and then follow-up might reveal that information. Anecdotal evidence can give us information as well, people talking about experiences that they have had, but haven't actually specifically reported that event. And then even just looking at the later slides that will show you about essentially showing that with the increase in efforts to educate folks on reporting hate crimes and what's necessary to get a hate crime reported, we also see an uptick in the amount of hate crimes getting reported. And we'll talk more about that in a bit, but I think this is at least helpful to understand that at this juncture, this is kind of the best data that we've got right now getting collected within King County in just Seattle, unfortunately, specifically. And again, as you can see at the very top here, it's really just, it's about 2 years old now, this data. This is from the year 2000, is giving kind of a snapshot window. But those are the groups that right now we've been able to kind of discreetly identify as being the highest groups that are reported being victimized. And I'll hand it back to Chris to kind of walk us through this next breakdown, which kind of focuses more on the county in general.
Sure, thanks, Stanley. And I guess I'll just kind of do a call back to David's question just a minute ago that as you could see, the disability piece of the pie was extremely small. So we have a very little sample size in terms of who's actually reporting that. But to answer the earlier question, it does specify by statute mental, physical, or sensory disability, or all of those things were accounted for in that definition. But moving forward to the slide that we were on. So again, this is going to kind of go back to the theme that we keep hammering, is that hate crimes are underreported. So the takeaway here is discussing the breakdown of both referrals and then actual filings are the two different slides here between, it's labeled as Kent and Seattle, but that's by our courthouses. So basically that's North King County, South King County is what that means. It's not that specific city. And so a couple of takeaways here. You can see the numbers certainly are increasing throughout time, which again goes to point 1 at the beginning of this meeting, that hate crimes are on the rise. You'll see at 2021 is a little difficult because we didn't have the full numbers to account for that. So that was taken at an earlier point in the year. We're still trying to compile that. But the interesting observations to see here, again, first of all, that the numbers are on the rise, but also you can see that the number of referrals is quite a bit higher in, again, North King County, which would be SEA Seattle, versus South King County. You can kind of see the correlation between when more cases are reported, that means, you know, disproportionately more cases are filed. That's just sort of natural. But again, the interesting takeaway from our committee seems to be, well, the populations between North King County and South King County are overall, when you draw the county line, relatively comparable. And certainly it's our understanding that South King County generally is more sort of diverse than North King County, but yet the numbers are so drastically different, which again, we don't know this, but our strong hypothesis is therefore, this is because of the underreporting issue, which is why the numbers are so skewed. And again, why we want to do outreach like this to see if that changes the needle or not. Again, some of this comes down to the fact that, as Stanley indicated, SPD is the one that has a designated hate crimes detective and just generally has a better calibration in terms of what is referred in as a hate crime versus not. So again, it might be whether or not it's labeled correctly. It might be just because they're not being reported. It might be both. But I guess we're having a hard time from where we sit believing that the numbers are that different for no reason at all. That seems suspect. So again, the takeaway is we want there to be more reporting to hopefully give us a better idea of whether or not we're right or not. But I think that's the observation we took away from these stats.
Yep.
Right. Next slide.
All right. And so this kind of gets at the heart of the issue that Chris and I have kind of danced around a little bit. And I'm sure everybody who's a critical thinker is saying, well, if you are increasing education about hate crimes and they're getting more reported, then obviously you're going to have more hate crimes. And that's true. And I think that at the end of the day, one thing that we are trying to ascertain, right, is getting a more accurate picture of the actual hate crimes that are out there, rather than just saying, okay, well, is hate in and of itself on the rise, or animus, actions being motivated that way, or are they just getting more reported because people know that they can be reported? I think for us, one way or the other, it really doesn't matter. We just want to make sure that they are getting reported, are getting redressed, and people are being held accountable for those actions. And so our main motivation in this is to make sure that people know how to engage with and understand what is and what qualifies as a hate crime. So if you can kind of see the distinction here that's identified of these bullet points, there's a 400% increase from 2012 to 2018. Again, these are some slightly older statistics because we're relying on a little bit outdated data, but again, just from one small subsect of King County, this sample of Seattle itself. But you can kind of see this dramatic increase that's going on, and it's directly related to them having a dedicated individual that is working on these types of cases, right? So when they have somebody who's focused on it and paying attention, we can see these changes. Now, one thing I want to draw your attention to as well, like Chris indicated, is these different degrees of events, right? We have the malicious harassment, which is the term that the RCW used to use. So for all intents and purposes for today, that is effectively a hate crime, versus a non-criminal bias incident and a crime with a bias element. A thing to remember is that the light green and this teal color, those are the two things that we really don't have the ability to file on. It's this malicious harassment that we've got the ability to file on, right? We can file a crime, for someone having committed an assault or a malicious mischief, but it doesn't rise to the level of getting to that hate crime level. It's only this dark blue that's really getting us there. So as a way to interpret that particular graph. And then, of course, the majority of the hate crimes that we are seeing in Washington occur within Seattle itself. And again, I think that's something that is also somewhat explainable by the fact that they are just more aggressively keeping track of this data than, as far as we know, anyone else in the state. So it's not even just within King County that this is really being paid attention to. It's specific to Seattle that they are paying attention to this specifically and uniquely compared to the rest of the state. So somewhat helpful information, but I think we want to make sure that it's out there just to show that there is a real benefit in making sure that reporting is increasing, because when reporting increases, it also means that we can more appropriately respond to it as well. I see. Yes, sorry, someone is messaging me directly. And yes, you're right. Washington has been reported as the fourth highest in the nation of reported hate crimes. Thank you so much for letting me know. We'll make that adjustment going forward. But I'm going to hand it off to Chris then for our last section here. I know we're running a little bit over time, so thanks everybody.
All right, thanks, Stanley. And again, although we've mentioned, I think several times that our data comes from SPD because they're the one that tracks and has a hate crimes detective, I want to be clear, by no means are we at all casting blame or any sort of shade toward any law enforcement, by all means. Again, their jobs are very difficult. These are very nuanced crimes. So I think the big takeaway is our hope is that, again, if folks both as a law enforcement officer or as a member of the public don't know what they're looking for, it's very difficult to get the information that they need in order to be able to show, as we've hopefully conveyed to you, these very kind of specific crimes. So I think, again, the hope is education that, if even one person, in each of these presentations takes away, oh, okay, that's kind of the critical fact that would be different. Or if I had just asked that question instead of that, that might have made the difference at the end of the day. Again, I think that's just our hope, is to try to, again, give folks the tools to know on both sides kind of what they're looking for to kind of get us the best information possible when it hits our desk. This last slide is hopefully going to be educational for, again, folks as a member of a community. If you, and again, I'm going to kind of interpret as well, you or somebody is the victim of a hate crime, what are some kind of practical things to do? Because that may not be obvious, particularly in light of, again, the prior comments about vulnerable victims who may not even know kind of where to start, or that you even can call 911, or whether that's going to do any good or things like that. So again, some of these may seem common sense, but I think they are worth bearing repeating, just to kind of make clear what would make sense in this situation. So number one, I think it's first and foremost, the victim should get themselves to safety. I would be concerned, because this actually came up. I'm the one who posed the question. In this day in social media, is it a good idea for the victim to try to film the suspect yelling things and attacking them, or is that just going to make them more angry? On the other hand, you may have some more documented proof. I think it would be our advice to don't do anything that's going to put your safety in danger. Get yourself away from the situation, first of all. Number two is to call 911 and to answer the dispatcher's questions as well as you can. And specificity is very helpful, because a lot of times And again, I'll draw a very clear example. Sometimes the difference between a hate crime and a not hate crime is the difference in a report being, hey, this guy shoved me off the side of the road versus, hey, this guy shoved me off the side of a road and he was wearing a shirt that said, again, insert terrible racial slur here. And his buddies were laughing at me and filming it while they're sort of saying, yeah, I get that. Again, insert expletive here. If one's in panic and reporting a crime, it's not necessarily the most intuitive thing to add all these additional things that maybe make the context very different from, again, this guy shoved me. In terms of, again, that really helps law enforcement out when they show up and say, okay, we're looking for a situation that seems to have this type of background, and helps them ask the right questions in terms of, okay, we're responding to a fight. Again, you see the subtle difference there, but you can make all the world in terms of assisting dispatch. And then really understanding kind of what happened. Particularly sometimes, again, these, as I keep coming back to, sometimes these victims, because of either language barriers or confusion or mental health issues or any number of things, don't even know the correct words to say. So again, that can be certainly be helped with, even yourself as a bystander saying, hey, look, man, the victim seems really shaken up and confused, but I saw him do this, and here's what he said. And here's, I think, what's important for you to know. Perfectly fine. Number 3, if you need language assistance, 911 will contact or connect with an interpreter. Again, maybe seems obvious, but maybe not so much for somebody who doesn't know that they can do that and maybe never reports, thinking, well, I don't even know what to say, or they're not going to be able to understand me anyway. Not true. They will get you the ability to communicate with them to take the report. Number 4, this again kind of dovetails into the prior comments, but when law enforcement does respond, it really is important to tell them everything and be as specific as possible. Again, these little details are what help both the patrol officers and ultimately a detective, if there is one, really kind of ask the right questions, ferret out correct facts and things like that. And I will say that there is value in reporting, either as a victim or as a bystander that saw something happen, even if you don't think that it's actually going to be prosecutable. Again, these things are not, I wouldn't say the entire motive for reporting something to 911 is you expect it to go to court, because sometimes these little things build upon each other. Sometimes what maybe seems like an inconsequential report at the time ends up turning into our office seeing, oh, hey, it's this guy that's on that street corner saying the same things every week. And it seems like he's only saying it to certain people. And now he's throwing, beer bottles at them. Again, I'm just making up a random example, but these little things sometimes add together, and they certainly do help us establish context and things like motive that maybe aren't obvious in isolation if one didn't know any better. So from our perspective, there is value to doing that. And then finally, number 5, telling the police the names of any and all witnesses to the incident. Again, that's really important in any investigation of a criminal case, to kind of know who saw what and who can maybe fill in some details that are not as easily established, or maybe a victim simply forgets. Again, oftentimes these are very jarring incidents. They sometimes either don't know what to say, or sometimes don't know the full extent of what to say. And again, an independent third-party witness that can say, yeah, well, I'm not sure if they told you this, but here's what I observed, which was problematic from my perspective, can make all the world a difference. So again, those are just some hopefully practical pointers to take away from if you or somebody you see happens to be in a situation that you think might qualify for that. All right. The last slide will be very, very fast. It is the name of a person. So David Bannock is our one of 2 head prosecutors and helped us prepare this presentation. He is the one who primarily screens a lot of the cases that come in and negotiates and would take those types of things to trial. A lot of why he enlisted people like Stanley and myself to try to help again spread the knowledge, because he's only one guy. His partner's named Yesenia Manzo. So they're busy actually fighting the groundwork, and our committee of approximately 30 people has taken it upon ourselves to do our best to help spread knowledge and help them out a bit. So if you do have any kind of specific questions about nitty gritty, he's your expert. You notice that is not me or Stanley's name. So feel free to kind of give him some context if you do have a question. Say, hey, we heard that presentation at the meeting, and we had a question if you're okay with that. So that's who that is. All right.
That is our time and our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions if we've got time for that. I will say I did get one direct message from Bailey, and to answer your question, Bailey, so she asks, who gets prosecuted for hate crimes? I've seen concerns that hate crimes are being prosecuted disproportionately against people of color. So Bailey, I would love to see what you're looking at so that I can be more in a position to meaningfully respond to that. But I'm probably going to end up directing you to David Bannock at the end of the day. He is our person who's going to be more in the position to tell you that direct information, but we can get back to you. And if you want to shoot David an email or shoot Chris or I an email, I'll drop my email into the chat here. We'd be happy to make sure that somebody gets a response to you, but I can tell you it'd be really helpful to know what you're looking at as the basis for that concern. And then if you can see as well, Eric Gray is also an actual advocate with our office as well. He's dropped his contact information in there as well, if it would be helpful to provide that. And to Diane, this presentation was actually provided to Kyle. I think he's going to be able to send that to folks if necessary. So I think that covers all the questions in the chat, at least.
Okay, are there any people in the meeting who would like to ask any questions? Raise your hand, with the reaction function. Well, I don't see any questions at this time. And thank you very much, Stanley and Eric, for your presentation. Very helpful.
Thanks, folks. If I could just have one final request, it'd be great if I could take a screenshot just for everybody knows Stanley and I actually did show up tonight. If you're uncomfortable with being on camera, I can totally respect that. But if you'd like to turn your camera off, I'm going to get at least me and Stanley. I'm going to hold David and whoever else would like to smile for me. That would be greatly appreciated. So I will count down basically 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you again.
Appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is old business, but we have no old business. So we can move on to the next item, which is community updates. And the first committee updates. The first committee alphabetically is the Affordable Housing Committee. And I saw that Morgan Brown is here. Morgan, do you have an update from the Affordable Housing Committee?
Yeah, not a whole lot new to report on since last time. We've met in the meantime and actually missed a meeting. We're going to meet a little off schedule next week on Monday for anybody here that's interested. 7 o'clock on Monday, and we'll send out to everybody we have on the list, which is pretty extensive. So if anybody's not on the list and wants to get on it, they can send me an email or Diane or something. It would find me. Any rate, we have a bunch of different work groups that we're working on. It kind of depends on how many people we have show up and stuff, but there's some activity going on with talking with Vashon Household and the Land Trust about some independent activity they've done that we're collaborating with them on. They're going to put together a survey which fits into our work group on taking a look at the market, housing market, and also exploring the idea of more community land trusts than we have. They have a couple on the island, and whether the land trust could get involved in that. And then water, actually collaborating with the Groundwater Protection Committee. We're both looking into the issue of water and housing and what's conventional wisdom and what's backed up by science. So again, next week meeting. Other than that, pretty much a lot of the same stuff. If anybody has any questions.
Let's see, do we have any questions for Morgan? I know at the Town Hall Forum for King County, I brought up the issue of affordable housing and the Community Land Trust, but I also mentioned that in order to make these things work, we may need community septic systems. And John Taylor from the county indicated that he was aware of that and that there may be some flexibility in the future on that issue in order to accommodate affordable housing.
That's great. Wastewater is obviously often one of the biggest issues. I had a business that sort of dealt in trying to do those sort of things exactly like you're describing there over the last sort of 20 years, and going to be seeing probably more of that. I'll have to look into exactly what he was talking about. I wasn't able to make that meeting, but I have a bunch of emails that I've been catching up on where people were describing it. I haven't gone through all of them yet.
Well, he also acknowledged the need for community land trusts. He said that they were very valuable. And so it sounds like, you know, the Vashon model for affordable housing, you know, the Rose Ballin model has been very effective, and it may be our best bet because it not only makes affordable housing, but it keeps it affordable. So, yep.
No, it's I think that's good. I think you know, Vashon Household has done 2 community land trusts, although it's not per se their forte. It's just sort of worked out that way. And part of the discussion has been whether the land trust, which is a pretty potent organization on the island, could be involved in actually looking at land that is, in addition to preserving of open spaces, also to creating some housing, and particularly some things that would be around the town. So yeah, it's interesting, an interesting certainly model. I mean, everything Vashon Household has generally now, as far as I understand it, is deed restricted in perpetuity. Community land trust is a slightly different model where it's held in a separate sort of a trust, and as you say, protected as affordable forever.
And to explain this to people who may not know what we're talking about, a community land trust is where the land underlying the housing itself is owned by the community as opposed to the individuals who are living in the houses. And it prevents the owners of the houses from getting a dramatic increase in the price of the house over the years. It keeps it affordable over a long period of time, as opposed to having it affordable when you buy it and then letting market forces control. Okay. Any other question? Okay, well, thank you very much, Morgan, for coming back and reporting on this. Okay, keep up the good work. And the next committee to report would be, let's see, the Equity Committee, Terry Sullivan.
Yeah, Kevin couldn't be here tonight, and he asked me to make a short report. We had one meeting so far. We had about 15 people that attended, and there will be an article coming out in the Beachcomber, hopefully this Thursday, that explains the general tenor and extent, intent of what we are trying to do. And it also invites people that, hopefully people that have directly experienced equity problems on the island to join our committee, because we'd like to have as many people as possible, as the widest variety of experience possible on the committee. But other than that, the basic working that we're doing, we're trying to draft a charter statement for our committee, and we're reviewing King County equity policy to see which elements apply to VMICC. And we're reviewing the VMICC bylaws and standing rules to identify the equity content. And we plan to compare the findings of the review teams at our next committee meeting. We're reviewing a toolkit used by other municipalities to develop equity policies. We really haven't gotten very far into that yet. In fact, this is all very ambitious, what I've told you so far. I'm not sure it'll go along as fast as it sounds like it will. And we're going to take nominations for committee chair and secretary, whatnot. And we will be voting on that in the meeting after the next one. And our next meeting will be 6 p.m. on April 6th. Anybody that would like to attend that or join the committee, I would refer you to the article that's coming out in the Beachcomber this Thursday and has all the information, the contact information that you'll need to join us. Let's see. We're also, we need to review and update all the growing list of individuals and organizations at Vashon-Maury Islands engaged in equity work, and make plans to outreach to those groups as we can, so that they're aware of what we're doing and can work with us. That's about it.
Okay, thank you, Terry. I didn't see any questions. So moving on to the next committee, that would be the Communications Committee, and Diane Emerson is going to give an update.
Yes, we did a survey for the first time of our mailing list and asked people to confirm their membership and ask their opinion on the name for the new organization. And we had 124 respondents to that survey. And if any of you have not confirmed your membership in either of these two organizations, please do so. You can send a message in the chat saying that you wish to be a member and that you are a resident of the island and the age of 16 or older, and you're in. That's all it takes. So that's all I'm going to mention about that survey related to the existing organization. I will come back a little bit later and talk about the new name as it relates to the new organization.
All right. And then reporting on ferry disruptions and implications. Is Emily Scott present? Let's see. Or Justin Hirsch? Justin, if you could.
Hi, David.
Hi, Justin.
Hey, everybody. So I'm actually just coming back from a flight at SeaTac, so I'm going to leave my video off. I am in the car, but I'm not driving it. So let's see, just a quick ferry update. I'm firing off the top of my head here because it's been kind of a long trip and I don't have all my notes in front of me. But, you know, we've got a new spring schedule coming online. I believe that's April 9th. We're still stuck at 2 boats on the weekend, but we should have 3 boats during the commute time during the week. So that's an improvement from the current situation. Typically, or historically, the spring schedule started in March. So it's a little bit of a fallback, but we will have an improvement. I think the main thing to talk about is that there have been 2 meetings of the community advisory group for the Vashon-Maury ferry dock terminal. That project has quite a long ways to go. Decision-making phases, but there's quite a lot of opposition to any improvements, or I should say expansion of the dock at the Vashon-Maury terminal from the Vashon-Maury community. So it'll be important for Vashon and Southworth residents to express their opinions that the dock needs to be effective and large enough to be effective. And there is an email address, which I can put in the chat here when I get a free moment, to give feedback. Also from the WSF website, it's possible to watch recordings of those meetings of the community advisory group, the technical advisory group, and the executive advisory group. And I think that's what I got for right now, and I'll take questions.
Okay. Let's see, are there any questions for Justin? Justin, would it be fair to say that we don't have to worry about them canceling the Fauntleroy ferry dock, that that's not in their plans?
Well, I don't think there's any realistic plans to move let me just say it this way. I don't think there's any realistic option to move the ferry terminal. As part of the decision-making process, there has been several proposed alternative locations. I noticed WSF hasn't put a lot of effort into really developing those alternatives. I've weighed in on comments twice that any alternative site to Fauntleroy is clearly not feasible. Not only would it hypothetically extend travel times, and those extended travel times would mean less service, but also, I mean, a whole new process and a whole new community and new environmental impact statements for driving piles in the water at some new site. It just seems very unrealistic. But that having been said, I think it'll be important for Vashon and Southworth residents to weigh in that Fauntleroy is clearly really the only option as far as a location for the terminal.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Well, thanks very much for your work on this, Justin.
No worries. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. New business. Yes. I will accept a motion from anyone to accept Rachel Rome as a board member. She has been recommended by the board to be one of our new board members.
So moved.
Oh, Diane? Okay. Diane Emerson's made a motion. Is there a second to the motion? Yes, Hunter Davis has seconded the motion. So at our next meeting, the meeting in April, we can have a vote to basically accept the board's recommendation that Rachel Rome be a board member from now on. And she's acting in an interim capacity at the present. Is that fair to say? Okay. All right. Now the other matter on the agenda of new business is that Gavin Covite has agreed to take over the role of secretary that was vacated when Camille Reeves resigned from the board. And thank you very much for doing that, Gavin. Okay, so then next is the community updates. None are formally scheduled this month. Open discussion. Do we have any items that people would like to bring up for discussion at this time? Hunter, is that your hand up, or is that just the ghost of hands raised past? Okay. Okay, well, I don't see anything in the open discussion. The next meeting date of the Vashon-Maury Island Community Council will be Monday, April 18th. Same time. Mike, I see your hand raised. You need to unmute yourself.
Along the lines of the next meeting and perhaps community update, I'm in the process of getting permitted to establish a seaweed and shellfish farm off the south end of the island in Colvos. Okay. Some of you may have seen an article in the Beachcomber, and I offered to give an update to this group, and I've been given a slot in the next meeting. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, you can come to the next meeting, or if you want to contact me sooner, you're welcome to do that as well.
Great, great, thank you.
I will put my email in the chat.
Okay, and I see Robert Piston's hand is raised. Robert.
Yes, thank you. Where do we stand on the name change and the formation of a new committee? And is that something we need to talk about tonight? I guess I was
Yes,
kind of expecting to hear something.
It is, Robert. You're right on top of it. And in a few minutes, we're going to be moving on to the next part of our meeting, which will be the meeting of our 501c4 organization, which will be the organization that will get a new name. Okay. And Diane Emerson will be leading that part of the meeting because at this point, she is our president of the 501c4 organization. So thank you for raising that issue. It's going to be coming up shortly.
Yeah, so don't leave. This is only that was the first half of the meeting.
Yes, so I am about to adjourn the meeting of the first half, which is the Vashon-Maury Island Community Council. And Diane Emerson is going to be taking over to lead the second part of this evening's festivities, which will be the 501c4 organization. So Diane, it's your show.
Okay, and the first thing I'm going to do is make David the host. So you can now start muting people.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
David the host. So David's going to be the host, and I will be running this part of the meeting as interim president of the 501c4 organization, and talk about welcoming everybody to the first meeting of the new organization, the new community council that you all unanimously voted at our last meeting to go forward and do. So the reason we need to keep this part of the meeting separate is because this is a new organization. So it'll make it clear to have the new organization address different issues than the old organization. And we'll be meeting like this for a while until the new organization is more fully formed, and then we can work on dissolution of the old organization. It's all going to be a gradual process over the next coming months. So the first thing to do is the agenda was sent out for this part of the meeting with the email and also on the website. So I'll be talking about the survey results for the new organization, and an advisory vote on articles of incorporation is a basic thing that we'll be doing. So first of all, the survey results for the new organization. 115 people want to be members of the new organization, plus a few I'm seeing from our chat tonight. And that's the survey results on that. And for the names of the organization, let me pull something up here from my computer. Oh, let's see. David, you're going to have to allow me to share my screen. Sorry. So the way to do that will be to go on down the bottom at share screen and allow me to do it. Oh, you just did. Okay, very good. All right. Here we go. So here we go. I'm going to make this bigger for you. So 125 people answered the survey on the name. And the way this worked was that you could check any of these names that you could live with as a new organization. And the clear winner was the Vashon-Maury Community Council. That's this one here. And that one had 70.4% of the votes. The next one was Vashon Community Council with 47% of the votes. So based on that, so you can see how that worked out. And that was a clear winner. People want Maury in the name. That's very clear about that. So because of that, then we have put the new name in our proposed articles of incorporation. And I'm running this meeting, so I can't make the motion. So I would like for David.
I will make that motion.
If you wouldn't mind doing that.
Right.
The wording is in your agenda.
I would like to move to adopt these proposed articles of incorporation and the name Vashon-Maury Community Council. If the Secretary of State determines that the name is too close to our previous name, we would further move to propose the alternative name Vashon Community Council to the Secretary of State. And this is to be voted on at the April meeting.
And I will put that in the chat.
Diane?
We're not, yes, go ahead.
So is there a cost to us each time we resubmit or not?
Oh, there's a minimal cost of $40.
Okay.
Yeah, there's the motion in the chat now. And they're also in the email that everyone was given, there is a link to a Google Doc that has the actual application for the Articles of Incorporation so that you can take a look at that and comment on it. I haven't gotten any comments from anyone on it. It's a pretty simple document, but I wanted everybody to get a chance to see it and to be able to ask questions about it. It'll be up there. I'm going to go ahead and put that new name in that document for people to consider because we want to get that in there. And I'm going to put the link to the document, the Articles of Incorporation. And did we get a second on the motion, by the way? David made the motion and I don't know if we seconded it.
Second,
Who was that?
Rob Piston.
Oh, thank you, Rob. Okay, so let me go get the link. The board has approved these, by the way, these Articles of Incorporation. The new board, which is the same board as before, but we have interim positions. So there you can see the Google Drive link is there for you to take a look at the actual Articles of Incorporation. Now, I'd like to open this up for discussion and question. Art first. Did you get your question answered?
Yes, I did. I just wondered if there was cost involved in filing.
Okay, so you can put your hand down now then.
Thank you.
Okay. And there may be some other minor costs, but I think there's not much at all involved in that. And Melvin.
It's been some time since I looked at the proposed Articles of Incorporation, but when I looked, there were 2 board members mentioned and no others. Is that correct?
All the board members are in an attachment because it said if you have there's all the form only had space for 2, but the rest are there I'll be sending those in as an attachment. So I can have that link to that attached document. I can put that in the Google Doc or a separate Google Doc as well.
Thank you.
It's the same list that's on our website. Yeah, the board of directors. And there's also one other thing that isn't in the actual document itself because there's no space for it. And that's the IRS wording for a 501c4. And the IRS is very particular about how they want things worded in your Articles of Incorporation if you're going to be a 501c3 or a 501c4. So I've got the exact wording that the IRS wants, and that is also in a separate document. I'll make sure that the links for both of those go out in the minutes and are on the website so that people can easily go see them. Okay, thanks, Melvin. Okay, any other questions I see in a chat? We have Steve Bergman. Will the new VMCC be a public benefit nonprofit corporation? Public benefit nonprofit corporation. I think public benefit is a charitable. If so, it's not going to be a public benefit. If I'm not sure what that term means.
Yeah, it's rather confusing to me too, because the new RCW just took effect in January and they don't describe it or define it at all in the actual statute. It means that you qualify as a Internal Revenue Service nonprofit. And if it's for the public benefit, then apparently you can apply for one. So I think
it could well be, maybe it just means nonprofit.
it does mean nonprofit, but for the public good. And I still haven't gotten to the bottom of it from the Secretary of State, but you might want to check into that because it's rather ambiguous.
The form doesn't ask for that.
Okay, the new annual report form does.
Well, I guess we'll deal with that when we have an annual report to fill. We're not even to that point yet. That will be a year from when we file our articles of incorporation.
Okay.
And by then, I'll bet they'll have that all sorted out.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good one. I hadn't run across that, but you know what? I'm going to add that to my list of questions to ask my guides. I am getting guidance from the 501 Commons organization, and just today I had a wonderful 1-hour session with attorneys that I asked some questions for, and they said I can contact them anytime, even though I was told I could only contact them twice every 6 months. They've opened it up for me, so I'm really pleased.
Well, good luck. I've failed in trying to get to the bottom of it, so.
A public benefit. Okay. Fortunately, it's not an urgent issue for us right now because it's not part of the Articles of Incorporation or not required in our bylaws or things. But excellent sleuthing there to find out that there's this question out there. Are there other questions that people have about what we're doing here so far? This is the first step, is the Articles of Incorporation and the name. And then after that, once we get that approved and get that started, then we'll be sharing the draft bylaws and standing rules. Right now, the draft bylaws and standing rules are being looked at by the board, and the interim board is working on those and finalizing those for the board satisfaction before it goes to a document goes for comment to the public and the members. And that will be happening in the next couple months. But first things first, a name and articles of incorporation. And so this organization, the new organization, will also be meeting Monday, April 18th after the VMICC group. So, and then we will be actually taking a vote then on the articles of incorporation with that name. So we have plenty of time for people to think about this, take a look at it, ask questions, and we'll discuss it again in a month when people have had a chance to take a look at this. Okay, I am not seeing any more questions or comments from anyone. So I am
Diane,
delighted.
I just want to thank you so much for all the work you've put into this. I think it's really going to make a big difference.
Well, I thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. And I'm delighted I actually have the time. And I'm very delighted to have found these people to help guide us who are professionals and do this for nonprofits. And it's really been wonderful to be able to contact these. They're all curious. They're very curious about what we're doing. You know, this whole idea of us rebooting our organization and going through all of these different steps. And they're very impressed with the dotting of the I's and the crossing of the T's that we're doing as part of this, and making sure that people have input and we are taking our time and putting it all out there and being very transparent about the whole process. So they're really curious because they haven't seen it before.
That's great.
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, then our next meeting date, Monday, April 18th, and we are adjourned. So thanks everyone for showing up. It's wonderful that you've come, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you very much, Diane.
Thanks, Diane. Bye. Thanks,
Good night.
Dave.
Thanks, Diane. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.